They thought you'd beg them to stay. Instead, you held the door open. They expected you to fall apart, completely. They expected a breakdown, late-night messages, overthinking, spirals of confusion. They expected begging, bargaining, maybe even a little groveling. They thought your identity was tied to their presence, that your self-worth would collapse the moment they walked away, that their absence would shake the very ground beneath your feet. But what they didn't realize is that you'd already done your breaking, quietly, privately, long before they ever said goodbye. You had already felt the sting of being taken for granted, of showing up for someone who never truly saw you, and you had already decided that peace, your peace, was no longer negotiable. So when they expected desperation, you gave them discipline. When they expected drama, you gave them detachment. When they thought you'd fall to pieces, you stood taller than ever. You didn't fight for someone who was fighting to leave. You didn't compete for space in someone else's life. You didn't shrink to fit into a story you had outgrown. Instead, you stepped aside, calmly, quietly, powerfully, because you finally understood holding on to yourself is always more valuable than holding on to someone who doesn't want to be held. So you let them go, not out of indifference, but because you finally loved yourself enough to stop proving your worth to those who refused to see it. They got used to your stillness, mistook your loyalty for naivety, misread your patience as passivity. They believed you'd always be there, the constant, the calm, the one who smoothed things over. You were their safe harbor, their emotional cushion, the one who gave more than you got, who poured from an empty cup just to keep the peace. And they didn't thank you for it. They expected it, demanded it, counted on it. But you weren't a revolving door. You weren't their backup plan. You weren't someone who could be pushed aside and then pulled back in at their convenience. You were a sanctuary. You were structure, stillness, sacred. And when they crossed one line too many, when they mistook your grace for weakness, you didn't slam the door. You simply held it open, not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with finality, with strength. Because letting someone stay who only brings chaos isn't compassion, it's self-destruction. Begging someone to remain in your life after they've shown they don't value it is a betrayal of your own soul. And you were done betraying yourself, so you let them walk. And as they did, you let go of the version of yourself that thought love had to be earned through pain, struggle, and sacrifice. You didn't lose them, you released them. And in doing so, you reclaimed your dignity. Now they sit in silence, wondering how you managed to let go so effortlessly. They scroll through your page, revisit conversations, replay old moments looking for signs, clues that might explain how you detach so cleanly. But the truth? It wasn't effortless. It was excruciating. You cried in rooms they never entered. You healed in silence. You bled internally and smiled publicly. Letting go didn't mean you didn't care. It meant you cared enough to stop chasing someone who treated your heart like it was optional. You chose silence, not because you lacked words, but because they no longer deserved access to your voice. You picked grace over games, distance over distortion, boundaries over betrayal. You didn't set fire to bridges. You built walls of peace. And those boundaries, they saved your soul. They thought silence meant weakness, that you were waiting, that any day now you'd fold. But you weren't silent because you were soft. You were silent because you were done explaining, done overextending, done bending to be enough. Because love, real love, doesn't chase. It doesn't beg. It doesn't plead for a seat at a table where it was never honored. If you've ever held the door open, not out of weakness, but strength, subscribe. Because letting go is sometimes the loudest way to love yourself. Now they linger in the shadows of your world, dropping a like on a random photo, watching your stories from burner accounts, leaving hope you're well messages that carry the weight of regret they never dared voice. But you're no longer watching. You're no longer available for decoding crumbs of attention. You've outgrown the need for their validation. The person you were when they walked away no longer exists. That version, the one that tolerated less, accepted confusion, and mistook inconsistency for effort, is gone. In their place stands someone transformed, someone who no longer waits for closure, someone who no longer entertains what feels heavy, someone who doesn't open doors that were already closed from the other side. They say they miss you, But what they really miss is the access, the safety, the unconditional energy you once gave freely, because the old you would have waited, would have worried, would have checked if they were okay. But this new you, this evolved version, they bless them from afar and keep walking. Part 5. Letting go wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You didn't abandon love. You redefined it. You stopped confusing pain with passion, stopped chasing clarity in chaos. You no longer needed to be needed. You needed to be at peace. Now your love is selective. It's intentional. It flows where it's reciprocated, not tolerated. You've stopped performing for people who don't clap, stopped giving chances like confetti, stopped explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. They don't know how to approach you now, and that's the point. You've become unavailable to the things that once broke you. Your energy isn't built on reaction anymore. It's built on discernment. The life you're curating now doesn't make space for repeated lessons. It doesn't offer re-entry to what drained you. You're not closing off. You're aligning. And the version of you that chooses peace over patterns, that's power. Part 6. So when they think of you, and they will, they won't remember the texts you didn't send. They'll remember the way you walked away like you had wings. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need to prove anything. You didn't throw dirt or expose receipts. You simply released. With grace, with finality, with peace. And in doing so, you elevated. They didn't break you. They revealed you. And now, you're not healing. You're whole. You're not waiting. You're winning. You didn't just hold the door. You built a new one. And this one? It only opens for peace, purpose, and people who truly see you.